Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to another edition of Talking Away the Taboo. We are doing another afternoon session here. We did one yesterday with Ellie Weinstein, and today we are going to be talking with Ariella Azaraf. Oh God, I'm totally, I think, butchering her last name, so she's going to help me. She's going to school me on her last name right now. And we're going to be talking about self-guidance, self-trust, just listening to your inner voice and really trusting yourself that you know the best for you in this process. Everything we do here at I Was Supposed to Have a Baby really deals with mental health and emotional support for anyone who's struggling to have a baby, who's trying to get to the next place in their fertility journey. And so this is just another talk in our series of really wanting to support you and bring people in who are experts. So, Ariella, I see you. Where are you? Come here. Okay, guys, just hold for a second and we will. Here we go. If anybody has any questions for Ariella, just drop them in the comments. Um, we, oh, and she's here. Okay, phenomenal.
I,
Yay, it worked.
as you said, Ariella, I see you come here. It was like, poof, I'm here.
You know what? This technology sometimes, it can be a little sticky.
I,
It can, as we all know. So when it works, I'm very grateful.
I
Um, I am so excited to have you. Please introduce yourself to our audience.
yes, thank you for having me. I feel like 4 o'clock is a good, like midday kind of refresh, pause. Okay, so my name is Ariella. You totally said my last name perfectly,
Oh God,
by the way. My last name
shocking. Okay.
is like, you can say it how you want. I change it sometimes, so you're good. My name is Ariella Azaraf. I am a therapist in New York City. I'm here on the Upper East Side right now. I specialize in anxiety and depression with young adults. I also grief. Grief is a friend of mine. Grief is something that I feel super passionate about, and in so much of my work, we talk. I like to deal with a lot of what we're going to speak about today, which is really creating a place of self-love, self-trust through different journeys in life, whether it's single, trying to have a baby, dealing with some type of grief, a miscarriage, a broken engagement, a divorce, really getting to know yourself through the different stages and through the different versions. I use the word versions a lot. I am trauma informed. Earlier in my career, I specialized in trauma work and different types of trauma. And now in my practice, I mostly specialize with relationships and anxiety, depression, and with a trauma lens, because trauma really informs a lot of the ways how we show up to our lives, in relationships, at work, with our spouse, with our partner, with dating. So I'm super excited to be here today. I think this is a really important
I,
topic.
it is, and I'm excited to have you. So let's like actually get right into it, right into the meat of it. When you and I were chatting before this, we were trying to figure out like what is the right topic to talk about. Should we talk about something specifically about infertility or specifically about loss? Should we do something that touches on grief? And what you said is actually what I want to talk about is this idea of trusting yourself and listening to that inner voice, because and this is me maybe totally manhandling your words, but I'm going to try anyway. What you said was that inner voice, that piece is something that really is the thread that runs through any kind of fertility issue that someone might have, and frankly any thing in life, honestly. But there is this idea that, maybe doctors know better, maybe your partner knows better, maybe your family member knows better, maybe the community, all of the pressure that we have an amazing Jewish community, but our community tends to put a tremendous amount of pressure on people, and especially in the like, oh, you need to have kids young, oh, you need to get married young, oh, you need to have this number of kids, and this is the spacing ideally of what it looks like. So talk to me about where this idea came from in your head and why you thought it was so important to really bring it up now, especially in light of all of these things.
Yeah. Yes. First of all, I just want to say I think that the work you're doing, Aimee, with Us Supposed to Have a Baby, and the truth that you put out there and the myths that we break, and just all of this information is so important because you're really taking parts that really need to be spoken about that aren't spoken about, and you're highlighting them. And I'll be very honest, as a member of the firm community, we need to do better in many ways. And I really think it starts with these kinds of conversations where we're really speaking truth, and we're holding all of the parts of life that are vulnerable, right? So I want to expand it. I know that your population is dealing with fertility, and I want to speak about that, but I want to expand it also to people in the dating world as well.
A
You know,
thousand percent.
because that's sometimes where it starts, right? Like I have many clients I've worked with that are trying to get pregnant or experience miscarriage, and very often when they outsource their opinion or they have a hard time listening to themselves, I always get curious, like where does that come from? Like where is this mistrust? And I really do believe that it starts in the dating process, when sometimes, right? Sometimes even earlier as a kid, right? If you have parents that kind of would omit or kind of not give you space to say your opinion or not really take you seriously, it could definitely start earlier. But I do think that we exist in a system in many ways where it feels there are beautiful parts too. I don't want to only draw on negative, but we're
Of
just
course.
truth.
Yes, we know.
I think there are parts to especially the dating world, and then expanded into fertility, where it's this notion of we outsource our opinions, right? We so often want to ask other people, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think I should do? You know, you went out with someone and you don't want to go out again, but the matchmaker or the mutual friend says, no, go out one more date. And you're like, I don't really want to see him or her again. This just isn't for me. And it's like, no, just one more time. And that really can, over time, when you're in that system for so long, it really conditions you to say, wait, hold on. Do I know myself, right? Do I know what I want? And we start to really self-doubt, and we start to really outsource our opinion. And what's so dangerous about that, and what's so challenging, is that it then creates this narrative for yourself of, I don't know myself best, right? They must know better than me because they're telling me what to do. And when I'm saying my no or I'm saying my truth, it's not really being taken seriously. So,
No, what I was going to say is that, it's so interesting because we also very, very much try to speak to the single community, and like we know that that angst and that longing comes like even from the time you're single, because you have these hopes and these dreams of the way you want life to be, the way you expected life to be, and then maybe it's not that way, but then you want it to you want your life to move forward, so you're not trusting yourself anymore. You're now listening to all the other people who are out there who are saying all
yeah.
the things.
And that's exactly it, Aimee, that then it conditions this belief in yourself that I don't know myself best. So when you get to other challenges in life, because there are going to be other challenges, you suddenly are disconnected from yourself, right? So if you get to this challenge of struggling to get pregnant, or, struggling with a miscarriage, or down the line, maybe it's even struggling with a child who's not doing well in school or whatever it may be, when you don't have that relationship with yourself, it's very hard to move through life without that connection to yourself, right? If you don't take yourself seriously and you don't feel that you could trust yourself, it's very, very hard to make any decision that's aligned with what's best for you, not what someone else said. So the first part of where I think is really important to start, and I talk to my clients about this all the time, is it's important to really, I know it sounds kind of funny, it's important to build a relationship with your body, okay? And what I mean by that is that, from a somatic lens, right? Soma means body. A somatic lens means that your body really holds the score, right? Bessel van der Kolk is like the trauma guru, and he wrote the book, I'm sure you know, Your Body Keeps the Score.
Yep.
He says that our body really is the best information center for ourselves. So very often I'll tell my clients that are dating, I'll say, how did you feel across from that person? Or even my clients who are dealing with a miscarriage, I'll say, how did it feel being in that room with that doctor, right?
Right.
How did it feel for you in your body? Because your nervous system never lies, right? If you're sitting across from someone that doesn't feel safe or that doesn't feel like good for you, oh, your body will let you know, right? Have you had that? I've had that.
I was going to say, it's interesting because we are, I find that like even just interviewing people actually for people on staff here at I Was Supposed to Have a Baby, and also speaking to people, you immediately get a sense like, okay, this is a person that I feel comfortable with. This is a person that I feel like I could build more of a relationship with. And then there's sometimes where it's like, "Mm, and like you may not I know for myself like sometimes I can't really put my finger on it because everything seems okay on paper, and I hear this a lot actually from the dating world, from people who are in the dating world, like it all seems good on paper, it's all shiny and brassy and with all colored flags and all the things, and yet there's just something that feels not right, and I have personally learned to listen to that, whatever that is, but that's also with a lot of practice and a lot of like knowing that if if I'm feeling unsettled, that feeling is not going to go away usually.
And what's interesting is that I think sometimes the deepest wisdom from that is from mistakes, right? Sometimes it's from looking back at a situation where it's like, gosh, why did I date that person for that long? Or gosh, why did I let that person convince me that they know better than me? And the deepest wisdom is that's learned, where we ignored the alarm clock that our bodies were going off, and we ignored, and then we can look back and say, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense, right? I felt completely unsafe in that person's presence, or I missed that cue, but that's normal because I had a supervisor once that said that mistakes are directional, because
Oh,
mistakes really, isn't
I
that
love it.
nice? They really know which way to go. And the tricky part is what is, and this is a question I get all the time, which what is gut? Like what is a gut feeling and what is anxiety, right?
Oh, that's a great question. Okay. What I mean, I don't know. I mean, sometimes the gut feeling, I mean, the way I would say is that sometimes the gut feeling is not necessarily bad. Like it's not, you can sometimes get a good gut feeling as opposed to like an anxious gut feeling.
Exactly. Exactly. But the way that we differentiate it is that it's very hard to access your intuition, which is your gut, right? It's really hard to access that when your head is spinning. When your head is spinning, you can't access. And there's actually a beautiful idea that neshama, which means soul, comes from the same language of nishima, which is breath. So you can really access that soul, that intuition, that gut when you breathe and you're connected to your breath, which we understand as slowing down the thoughts, right? We can't connect to our gut or our intuition when our thoughts are flooding, right? Because then it's blocked. It's blocked. And again, this goes for anybody dating and somebody struggling with any type of struggle, and especially fertility, is that you can't make any decision when it's noisy. So the first thing I have my clients do, Aimee, is I have them put their feet on the floor, and you want to feel the ground. That's a very grounding exercise, because when your mind is racing, you've taken yourself like to the end of a movie that's never going to be produced, right? You've taken yourself like way far out. So to bring yourself back, you really want to feel your feet on the floor and to take a breath, and then that calms your body, so you're able to access, okay, what is my body saying? Right? How's my body reacting to the environment, to the person across from me, to the situation?
I love that. I love that. I'm also wondering if like is another technique also about time, and meaning that like I'm just thinking of just anxiety, like anxiety that I had after after miscarriage, like I had many miscarriages. Much of our community already knows this, it's not a secret, and I was so anxious to get pregnant again that I was just spinning and spinning and spinning. But sort of the more time I gave myself to be able to kind of settle in and to actually like decide that I wanted to move forward, the anxiety kind of lessened. So I'm wondering if there's an element of time that something about if you sit with something that it's easier to digest.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a good question. I think a part of what anxiety does is it gives you this pressure of I need to know right now. I need to know right now, what am I supposed to do? What should I do? And then it's kind of like, let's take a breath. And I call it like the highlighting technique of just like noting. Okay, I'm going to gently note to myself that there was something again that this person did that really didn't sit well. Or I'm going to just gently note to myself, something that that doctor said that really didn't sit well, right? Because I think a big part of the miscarriage journey is that you really want a healthy and a good, safe relationship with your doctor, right? Because you're so dependent and really reliant on their advice and their guidance, especially when you're trying to get pregnant again and you have that trauma. So if something, and again, I want to extrapolate that also to people that are dating, if you're sitting across from someone and there's just something about them that isn't sitting right, instead of convincing yourself that you have to have an answer right now, allow yourself to just kind of like note it and to highlight it. And then what you do, and I think this is a really important piece. I think, especially here in New York City, we live in this like chaos, like running, hustle, bustle culture. And we don't often, and we also live in a very, and this is globally, we live in a very we live in this world where it's like instantaneous. Like, oh, I need this. Okay, Amazon. I need this. Okay, here's like 5 apps that will be at my door in 5 seconds. Truly, that's how it works.
Yep.
And we don't often enough, and I'm guilty of this also, just like take a step back. And it's often with that step back that's where we can have that clarity, right? So part of accessing your intuition is giving yourself that step back. And I like to give real-time examples that for some people that might look like coming home from a date, and instead of sitting in your parents' bedroom talking to them about the date, saying, let's talk in the morning, right? Or instead of going in talking to all your roommates, okay, get your popcorn and drinks and like story time. Maybe it's not story time. Maybe you just say, guys, thank you so much for your interest. I just need a minute, right? And the same thing with the fertility journey is that sometimes you need to just not share everything with everyone. Yeah, and then you could check in with yourself.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, yeah, that's 1,000% right. I know, one of the things that we advise people all the time is we say, like, don't make decisions rashly. Like, take a moment, let it wash over you, like, absorb it, and then, you know, make the decision when you feel ready. Give it some space, give it some moments, process it, exactly what you're saying. Um, yeah, I think that's I mean, brilliant. What are there other are there other things, like what other things can people do to just help put that in place? And how do also, like, how do you I mean, how do people also like tap into the idea that, like, to actually listen to it? Like, you can put these pieces in place, but then sometimes, like, it's just hard to listen to your intuition. Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, well, that's a good question because I think very often it's somebody's relationship with themselves and their own self-confidence, right? So if your narrative is, my mom knows better than me, or if your narrative is, oh, that matchmaker or that doctor knows better than me, right? It's a little bit different because doctors sometimes hold that information. But in terms of trusting yourself and what your next step is, whether you want to start getting pregnant again or whether you want to share the news with someone, right? Just globally talking about people in a vulnerable place. What the most important thing to do is you first want to listen to your narrative. Like what am I telling myself about how I feel about this situation? And I was speaking about this with a client yesterday, and I think that sometimes self-confidence is like this whisper of nobody knows better than me. And honestly, sometimes, and I had a client who was like, Ariella, that sounds nice, but like I don't believe it. And I said, fake it till you make it and repeat it. Repeat it.
And why, like, I was like, can we dig a little bit more into that for a second? Like, why did she say, I don't believe it? Like, what is it that people sit with that makes them not listen here? Because what I'm thinking about is all the people out there, right, who are like they're desperate to have a child, or they, God forbid, lose a child. Yes, also the single community who, like, there's a specific situation where, they're, they don't necessarily trust the voice with the guy that they're going out with. But if I put that, if I put that onto the fertility community, and the emotions that wash through, is it that people think, like, I don't have the right to feel upset, or I don't have the right to my grief? Like, is it wrapped up in that the people feel that it's they don't have the ability to feel, or to be upset? Or is it more that they've just been conditioned in general to just not trust themselves? Like, I'm just wondering, because society tells us, right, that we should just, like, move on with our lives, that we shouldn't sit with our emotions, that grief is something you should get over quickly, you shouldn't show that you're sad, you shouldn't show that you have, like, these really deep feelings. But that's just not reality.
Well, I think we live in a grief denying culture. I do. I read an article on that, and I can post it, and you can message me. I'll send it to you. But it was so true. I think it's a bunch of things at once. At the risk of sounding like a therapist, I think
Th-
it's a lot.
th- Thanks so much for that, Ariel. I appreciate that.
I think it's a lot at once. I think that it's when we take a look at our inner critic, or we take a look at that part of us that's negating our truth, or that's outsourcing our opinion. You have to get curious, like, why do I do that? And very often, sometimes it's birth order. Sometimes when you're the youngest, you just like don't have a voice, or when you're in the middle,
Oh, yeah.
washed between, when your voice would just kind of like, okay, Ariella's talking again. Okay, next, and then that's kind of how you're conditioned to a point then in your later life, in your adulthood, where it's like, this really isn't servicing me to never listen to myself, right? And then we get ourselves into good therapy and we work on it, right? We work on your environment and the people around you, and how to really start to take yourself seriously. But I think it's a few parts. I think one, it's definitely, what are the messages that have been sent to you? Very often when my clients are critical of themselves, I'll say, who said so? It's like,
Oh,
there's my mom again, right? My mom, not me personally, but people will say that. What, there's my mom again telling me, I don't know, right? Telling me like what to do, not just saying, oh, honey, you're right, right? That's a really healthy way for a parent to respond. Like, okay, tell me why isn't he for you? Or tell me why, you're feeling like that doctor isn't a good match for you. That's the healthy way, because you're validating the person's
right.
experience. But I think that very often people can be very dismissive. And when they're dismissive of your opinion, then you start to condition yourself that I don't know what's best for me. And then we so freely outsource. But I do think that it takes a lot of mindfulness, truly, to take a step back before you just spew everything and want to tell. And nowadays, it's like everything's on the phone, and you copy and you paste and you forward. Before you do all that, it's like really fighting a nature. It's like fighting a natural desire to just tell everyone everything, and trying to hone in is really challenging for some people.
And so I guess, like, then the natural question is, then how do, I mean, what are your suggestions in terms of the way, like, if people are not good at this yet? I mean, yes, you're saying about, putting up boundaries, or different things, and like trying to sit back, trying to take the space. But if someone actually really wants to do some work, and really wants to have this feeling that they start to get to know actually their real selves, and what they're feeling, without putting other people's feelings on them. I mean, what does that look like? How I guess, how can people learn to trust themselves? Like, because that's a whole other, like, piece to this. It's like you can do certain things, but at the end of the day, are you really going to learn to trust yourself?
I think the first part, Aimee, is to get very, very curious with, why don't I trust myself? You've got to go to the why. You can't just go to the solutions, right? You have to go to a little bit of the surgery, right? Because, or else it'll just be like a Band-Aid on a wound that like really needs surgery. You've got to ask yourself, why have I been conditioned? Get curious. Why have I been conditioned to not take myself seriously? Before we talk about intuition, before we talk about self-trust, why do I have this relationship with myself? then you could get curious. Oh, it was years of, dating where matchmakers told me what to do. Oh, it was my parents. They never took me seriously. Oh, it was my siblings. I never had a voice at the table, right? And then that's a little bit where the inner child work comes in, of allowing yourself to kind of like embrace that version of yourself that wasn't heard. So for many women in their 30s and 40s when they're later dating, sometimes it's embracing that 20 something year old self that was so vulnerable to anyone that would, set them up or they would interact with. And you want to hold them and say, oh, you were so lost or you're so vulnerable. Okay, we found our voice now. Or for I could keep going, so I'm going to
No,
pause.
no, I was just gonna say, but oh, okay, fine. I mean, now I'm gonna be the skeptic here, right? And
Please.
like I am like the eternal skeptic of like this inner child's work, and so I'm okay, fine. So you okay, it was your mother. Okay, it was a shotgun. Okay, it's maybe it's even your spouse or friends or like everyone else is telling you what to do. Fine. So you acknowledge that it was that thing, but then how do you move forward? How do you move off of that? Like what comes next? How do you actually, I mean, okay, I'm trying to take like, probably years of therapy and crystallize it into like
No,
a 2-minute answer. Can you do that for me,
I
Ariella?
love it. I love it. Amy, I love it. Give it to me. I feel like my genetic makeup is Moroccan, so I can handle like I can handle the fire. No, it's not. It's good fire, and I'm sure that you're asking questions that people here are wondering. You ask a very good question. Okay, Ariella, beautiful. Inner child, blah, blah, blah. I know where it comes from. Now what? Here's what. You take that part of you when you're in the moment. First, you have to know when you're struggling with mistrust. And I think that's really the beauty of therapy or self-work or whatever journey you're in. But the beauty is more awareness around when it creeps up for myself, when I'm beginning to not trust myself.
Mm.
And when you're able to access, like, ooh, it's coming up again, and it is a trigger. It's a trigger, right? When you're in a situation where you feel like, oh, I'm doing that thing I do that I'm asking someone else what to do. I'm trying so hard not to do that, but I just did it again. So it's gentle awareness, first of all, of what I'm doing, right? I'm in this cycle. So just kind of naming it and even saying it to a friend, right? Or just saying it to yourself, like, oh, I'm doing that thing I'm working on. And then once you've acknowledged it, I think then it's about kind of like rerouting. Hold on. Okay, I'm doing that thing again. The inner child piece that I work with my clients on is kind of like embracing that part of you that's coming up again at a different stage of your life, right? So for somebody struggling with miscarriage, that might look like reaching a point in your fertility journey that you're outsourcing or you're asking someone what they should do. And then you're like, hold on, no one knows better than
Right.
me. That's when those quiet whispers come in. Okay. So you notice gentle awareness, like I'm doing that thing again with compassion. You can even use a little humor. That's okay. And then you can move into this place of how do I need to show up for myself now? Do I need to hug myself, right? Do I need to do some type of tapping, self-soothing technique? Do I need to just reroute, right? And then say, do you know what, never mind, don't answer that, right? But you're able, I see someone sent 100%, so that means it's resonating. But it's okay to fall back in and then you just quickly get yourself out, right? And I think it's then where we kind of have to use all of our tools. And before we log down, I was really thinking about it. I think one of the tools is this whisper of nobody knows better than me. You feel your feet on the ground, you take some time away because you have to notice when you get into that cycle, right? You have to notice when you're going into old patterns. And the only way you can show up differently is if you take a step back.
Yeah. I'm just like I'm processing as you're speaking, and I'm thinking, I hope that people are hearing this because it is the ultimate the ultimate sort of I'm just going to use the word like the ultimate mind F of everything that goes on in the fertility space and like all of these like for any kind of these struggles is that it's a loss of control. And when you're not in control, what I hear over and over again, and I know also in my own life, it's like you start to doubt yourself about like, did I make the right decision? Should I have done this? Maybe like, maybe I should have taken those meds instead of these meds. Maybe I should have seen that doctor and gone to the specialist, but I'm only staying with my OB. Maybe like it was because I like exercised too hard and that was the reason why I lost the baby. Maybe my mother yelled at me too much and then I got too stressed and that's why like there are like all of these things that we hold and we put this self-doubt on our journeys, and really what you're saying is like those things might be true or they may not be true, but at the end of the day that we have to try to listen a little bit better to the voice inside because only we know best. Am I getting it?
Completely, completely. And I think even deeper than that is really limiting the amount of people you speak to, because that's what fuels anxiety. And when you fuel the anxiety and you talk about it with this person, then it's just like it's hard to show up for yourself. So I think the combination of taking time for yourself, really limiting who you share, because everyone's going to have an opinion. Everyone's going to have an opinion of what you should do, what you shouldn't do. So I think it's a combination. I think it's a part of it is taking time for yourself, taking a step back. I think a part of it also is really listening to the way that you speak to yourself, right? Because if you come up with all these excuses, oh, my mom said, it's from my mom's stress or it's from me working out, you're going to really drive yourself nuts, right? And very similar in dating. It's like, I answered with him, but I don't like these suggestions. Maybe I shouldn't have done it. But at the time I had clarity, then it's like, it's like we zoom in on a picture, we can see like every imperfection, right? And then you
Totally.
like zoom, oh, I look good, right? But when you zoom in, it's like you see everything, right? That wrinkle, that this. But then when you zoom out, we got to just zoom out more, because that's really where I think the reprieve comes.
Ugh, I mean, yeah, it's so smart. I mean, yeah. Ariella, as we wrap up here, um, how would you know, the person who comes to you, who, or even anyone else who might be listening to this right now, who may not be able to get into therapy right away, but really just wants one tangible thing for them to do, one tiny thing that could help them, or maybe it's two things, but something small, something tangible, something actionable that people can put into place in their own lives today to try to just tap in a little bit to this.
Whew, this is good. You're
I,
really making me think. I think
I ask only the hard questions,
I
only
love
the hard
it.
ones.
I appreciate. I love it. Um, it's a good question. I think the first piece would be what I said before, is to get really honest with yourself. And that's really hard. And if you're not in therapy, maybe it's calling a friend that you really respect, one friend, not 10 friends, one friend, and perhaps journaling, but asking yourself what is getting in the way, or what or who is getting in the way of trusting myself. And this is going to be a really hard question, because it might be a parent, it might be a sibling. I've had this many times, or it might be your roommate or your friend. And you really want to ask yourself, who in my life or what in my life is getting in the way of trusting myself? Who doubts me? Who makes me question myself? Right? That's one. And journal about it. Write a letter to yourself. Don't send it to anyone. Just draft. Get really honest and get it out of your head and on paper. Number two, I like this question, Aimee, because I feel like if you ask other therapists, we would all say different things. This is just the Ariella Azaraf brand on
I,
it.
I, that's why we have you here.
So first is get real. Get so real with yourself, because the only way we start healing and correcting patterns is from getting real. So that's number one. Number two, I would say slowing down in all the ways. Putting your phone away, not talking to people right when you walk in from the doctor or a date, not forwarding all the information about everything going on in your journey, whatever journey you're in, like to really just pulling back. And what's interesting is that when we make challah, the most activity happens when we don't touch it. right, then it rises.
Right. Right.
So a lot of, right, even like think about Shabbos, like we heal the most. I feel for myself, like the minute you light candles Friday and you're like, oh, hands up. Like I'm done. I can't do anything. Right.
Correct. I mean, it's the most amazing part of my week. Yeah.
So I think the other part of it is just like space and time, because that's really what also allows anxiety to soften. You allow your body to soften. So before acting on like that impulse or that thought or the anxiety, you're allowing yourself to say, okay, hold on, I need to just dial it back.
I mean, I love that. And you're, I mean, everything you're saying is resonating. Ariella, you and I could talk about this probably for the next 2 hours, but I think that wouldn't be fair to anybody at this point. Um, but I'm so grateful to you for everything that you do for the fertility community and the general Jewish community at large. Where can people find you if they want to reach out and talk more?
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I think I said this in the beginning, I'll say it again. It's so, this Instagram space is so cool because it's all these people just saying truth, and it's hard to hear. And that's part of why you're so awesome, is because it's like, I don't know where this will land, but I'm going to say it. So, like, let it land somewhere well. So you can find me. My name is Ariella Azaraf, LCSW. You can see me on the live. You can follow me, message me. It's my name, Ariella Azaraf, LCSW.com, or at Gmail. It's super easy. But please stay connected, and I look forward to working together to really just help people and to shed light into how for people to protect themselves, stick up for themselves, and set those boundaries and really become the highest version, because we are only our highest version when we're calm and when we're attuned. So thank you for having me,
You're
Aimee.
welcome. You're welcome. And all of you out there need to know that you don't have to worry about reaching out to Ariella because however you pronounce her last name, it will be fine.
Same place.
Ariella, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for everything that you do. And everybody, you know where to find me and you know where to find her.
Thank you
Have a
so
good
much.
day.
Good day.
Bye.
Thank you guys for joining.